your instrument, spinning to life with deafening resonance and gathering up the swirling essence like thread on a great spindle. Exhausted, your consciousness slipping away, your last sight was of the machine, dark and dormant. Then your eyes closed. After coming to and searching for some time, you discovered the route Theos used to enter Sun in Shadow, and embarked on a long and arduous ascent back to the surface. At your direction, the lost souls of the Hollowborn were funneled back into the churn of Bareth's wheel to find their way into new vessels and partake in the life they had. Though parents of Hollowborn would remain just that, the end of Whitewind's legacy would bring about a spate of new, healthy births, with many of the infants bearing souls once meant for Hollowborn children. The natural cycle of life and death had been restored to Deerwood. It is said that Galawain is the enforcer of the guards, and is known to hunt down those who wrong them. To wrong Galawain, then, is truly to wake the beast, and the father of monsters took great umbrage at your broken promise to him. Along with Mogren and Abidan, Galawain embarked upon a more direct approach to those that weren't destroyed by the beasts of Galawain often found themselves at the mercy of the fires of Mogren. A dry spell throughout Deerwood led to a rash of forest fires on a scale not seen since the War of Black. Lord Radric's zeal had brought him back to life once, but it would not do so again. Radric's destruction at your hands spelled the end of his suffocating rule over Gilded Vale and the surrounding area. In his absence, the village prospered, becoming a popular destination for new settlers. Following the assassinations of Duke Avar Wolfgren and Lady Webb, Defiance Bay was thrown into political upheaval. In the ensuing weeks, the streets had become the domain of looters and blackguards, but once the dozens had regrouped in the wake of the riots, they quickly put an end to the criminal activity, patrolling the streets in droves and administering their brand of law on any perceived offenders. They also took the opportunity to depose the weakened Knights of the Crucible from their position of authority, branding them traitors to the people for their actions during the riots. The dozens would soon find themselves overwhelmed by the problems of a leaderless metropolis, and in the days and months ahead, the destruction of the machine atop Ter Noaneth spelled the end of the reanimated corpses in Heritage Hill. Though at first few were willing to venture into the abandoned district, it was soon cleaned out and rebuilt. The district's horrors still fresh in people's minds. It would be the Duke's assassination at the apparent hands of an animancer had caused catastrophic rioting in the streets of Defiance Bay, and few animancers survived the first day. In the weeks that followed, the sanitarium was decorated with the dismembered heads and torsos of those who had practiced the science, and anyone caught studying it thereafter. The town of Deerford had seen the last of the cult of Scan. Dark rumors about the town's many curses quickly faded, and travelers, the destruction of the Eyeless, and the permanent loss of Abidan's memory emboldened Andra. She considered the knowledge that Kith might have found, both of the origin of the gods and her part in concealing it, and vowed she churned up a fury in her seas. Underwater mountains rose and fell, and the seabed was swallowed and spat out again by the great maws that divide the continents of Kith. Only Thus, they sealed off the White Forge and abandoned their pursuit of Durgan's steel. Durgan's battery became a trading post once more, and Stalwart thrived in its shadow. Stalwart's revival brought trappers, traders, and artisans from all over the Deerwood, and from Red Ceres too. The Flames That Whisper clan found a cautious peace with Stalwart, particularly once the villagers heard of the aid the ogres had offered against the Eyeless. The clan moved back into the Russetwood, and as Stalwart grew in prestige, the villagers formed a tighter alliance with their ogre neighbors. Within a generation, ogre traders visited Stalwart, and Harmka's death had brought the Devil of Carrick little satisfaction. In time, her taste for vengeance soured. What replaced it was a hunger to feel something, anything, new. Summer had thinned the snowpack twice over. She pushed through the mountains, past Raid Ceres, and into the broad plains of Ishamiddle. She had forgotten what it was like to simply journey, no goal or destination in mind. Though she felt her movements slowed, but so did the world around her. Waist-high grasses undulated and tacked in the wind, as gradual as the tides. Sparrows and blackjays made steady pilgrimages across the sky. Zawa came to peace with the loss of his master's knowledge, and decided instead to start anew. He traveled back. Free from the burden of her memory, Maneha soon left the gift-bearers and resumed adventuring. Now that she had Maneha rediscovered her zest for battle, extravagance, and romance. She kept her gaze on the horizon, looking from one journey to another more distant, from the lover in her arms. After the death of the master below, a strange quiet fell over the endless paths of Ad-Nua. The attacks on the fortress above ceased. Ad-Nua's silent titan, the closest. Haravius took his leave of the party and, after his first bath in years, returned to his nomadic lifestyle. With his homesickness expunged, wherever he went, Haravius left behind stories of the Autumn Druid, a temperamental, one-eyed wise man of the forest. Adair chose not to return home to Gilded Vale. Still most comfortable far from cities, he settled in Deerford, which, like many towns in the Deerwood, was beginning the slow process of rebuilding. Believing now that it was the obligation of Kith to be the leaders their gods had not, Adair was soon. When the dust settled in sun and shadow, Aloth looked upon the remains of Theos Ixarchanon. With a flick of his wrist, he burned Theos's robe, headdress, and every other symbol of the man's power. Never again, he vowed, should Kith live in. With the Watcher's goals accomplished and his own vows fulfilled, Kanarua sailed back toward Rawatai, thinking on the lessons his travels had provided him. True to his word, Kana soon set sail. With Theos defeated and the souls released from sun and shadow, healthy children were born once again in the Deer. Durrance used Magrin's strength only until Theos had been cast from the world, and then swore off her influence entirely. Regret came to weigh heavily on his mind, and a man who had never. In her 4-month journey back to Nositoc, Sagani found that the landscape she traveled had become strangely colorless. The food bland and unsatisfying. Old beloved songs sounded toneless. The rituals of changing seasons became drudgery, and Sagani experienced her life back in Masuk as if in someone else's skin. So she fought to feel the worth of her actions, or at least to let her village feel them. For you, the death of Theos brought an end to your waking visions and a silence to the whispers of the past. In their absence, you were able to sleep. But at the moment, there was little to be done, and the matter would have to wait. A long journey loomed ahead.